What if I told you a professional wrestler once legally owned a world championship belt that a billion-dollar company had absolutely no legal right to take back from him? You'd tell me that's impossible. You'd say the company writes the contracts, the company owns the title, end of story. And you'd be wrong. Or what about this? In 1999, a major American pay-per-view continued broadcasting live after one of its performers died. Not the match, the entire show. And the company made that call in real time. I had to fact-check this twice. Both of these things are 100% documented, and they're just the start. We've got 10 wrestling facts today, and every single one of them sounds like something a 12-year-old made up on the school bus. Stick around, because by fact number 7, I guarantee you're going to be pausing this video to Google something. But here's the part nobody talks about. These aren't just fun trivia. Some of these facts reveal legal chaos inside the wrestling industry that most fans have never heard of. Some of them changed laws. Some of them cost people their lives or their livelihoods. And one of them involves a media company paying a wrestler over $1 million to literally do nothing. Not because they wanted to, but because a contract forced them to. That's the world we're diving into today. 10 facts, all real, all verifiable. To understand why wrestling keeps producing facts this unbelievable, you need to understand what professional wrestling actually is from a legal and business standpoint. It is not a sport. It is not purely entertainment in the traditional sense either. Legally, it occupies this strange middle ground that regulators, courts, and even the performers themselves have been arguing about for decades. Most states in the U.S. classified wrestling as an athletic exhibition rather than a contest for most of the 20th century, which freed it from boxing commission oversight, but also created enormous gray areas. When you combine scripted outcomes with real physical danger, real money, and real legal contracts, you get an industry where the bizarre isn't just possible, it's practically inevitable. And the world wrestling operates in has always been deliberately strange. The industry invented the word kayfabe, a term believed to derive from Pig Latin for the word fake, as a secret code used by carnival and early wrestling performers to signal that outsiders were nearby and the illusion had to be maintained. The Oxford English Dictionary traces the word to the 1980s in print, but wrestling insiders used it for decades before that. Think about that. An entire industry developed its own secret language to protect a shared fiction, and then became a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise built on top of it. The Wrestling Observer newsletter, run by journalist Dave Meltzer since 1982, has been rating matches on a 5-star scale for over 40 years, and those ratings are now cited in academic papers on sports culture. Fact 1. The WWE had to legally change its name because of a panda. I am not joking. For decades, the company operated as the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF. But the World Wildlife Fund, also abbreviated WWF, had been using that name since 1961. The two organizations coexisted under a 1994 agreement that restricted how the wrestling company could use the letters globally. When McMahon's company expanded its internet presence, the Wildlife Fund argued they were in violation. The UK High Court ruled in favor of the World Wildlife Fund in 2001. By May 6, 2002, the wrestling company was legally required to stop using WWF and rebranded entirely to World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE. Every piece of archived footage had to be edited, every entrance theme, every logo. Look it up. A charity that protects pandas forced a wrestling empire to rename itself. Fact 2. The Montreal Screwjob was not a worked storyline. In November 1997, Bret Hart was the WWF champion and leaving for WCW. At the Survivor Series in Montreal, while Hart was locked in a sharpshooter submission applied by Shawn Michaels, Vince McMahon ordered the referee to ring the bell, without Hart submitting, without his knowledge, without warning. This is documented in the 1998 documentary Wrestling with Shadows by director Paul J., whose crew had full access to Hart. McMahon later confirmed it in WWE's own production, The Monday Night War. Hart's response when he realized what happened: he spat in Vince McMahon's face. on live pay-per-view. And the two men didn't speak for years. Real, documented, not a storyline. The referee Earl Hebner reportedly fled backstage immediately after the bell rang. Fact 3, and this one is genuinely hard to process. Mick Foley lost his ear in the middle of a wrestling match and kept wrestling. On November 5, 1994, in Munich, Germany, Foley competed against Vader. His head became trapped between the ring ropes. When he pulled free, the top rope tore off most of his right ear. Not the whole thing, most of it. Ringside found the ear. Foley later wrote about this in his 1999 autobiography, Have a Nice Day, published by Regan Books. He described the referee asking if he wanted to stop. He said no. He finished the match. The ear was not successfully reattached. Dave Meltzer covered it in the Wrestling Observer newsletter in November 1994. An ear. He lost an ear mid-match in Germany and kept going. Fact 4. WCW paid Bill Goldberg not to wrestle after the company no longer existed. In March 2001, Vince McMahon purchased World Championship Wrestling from AOL Time Warner for approximately $4.2 million. He bought the tape library and the intellectual property, not the active talent contracts. Time Warner still held those. Goldberg had a guaranteed contract, and because Time Warner no longer had a wrestling product, they were contractually obligated to pay him roughly $1 million to sit at home. This is documented in The Death of WCW, the 2004 book by R.D. Reynolds and Brian Alvarez from ECW Press, and corroborated by Wade Keller's Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter archives from 2001. One of the most physically dominant performers in the industry's history spent over a year being paid by a media conglomerate to do absolutely nothing, because nobody included a dissolution clause. Fact 5. On May 23, 1999, Owen Hart died during a live pay-per-view, and the show continued. Hart was being lowered from the rafters of Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri, as part of his Blue Blazer character entrance. The harness released prematurely. He fell approximately 78 feet into the ring. He was pronounced dead at a hospital approximately 90 minutes later. The WWF made the decision to continue the event. This is documented in the wrongful death lawsuit filed by his widow, Martha Hart, settled in 2000, and extensively covered by the Kansas City Star. The decision to air the show after his death remains one of the most debated choices in wrestling industry history. Fact 6. At ECW One Night Stand on June 11, 2006, Rob Van Dam simultaneously held both the WWE Championship and the ECW Championship, the only performer to hold both titles concurrently in that era, per WWE's own official title history records. Now let's talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, because their training system is one of the most documented and extreme in all of professional sports entertainment. Young Lions, the name given to NJPW rookies, live in the dojo. No personal television, no phones during training hours. They are forbidden from performing any of their signature moves for the first 1 to 2 years of their career. They cook meals for senior wrestlers. They clean the ring every single morning before training. This isn't mythology. It's documented in multiple Tokyo Sports newspaper profiles and discussed extensively in Vice TV's Dark Side of the Ring Season 3 and in Peter Barnett's book, Strong Style, The History of Japanese Professional Wrestling. The system is designed to break down individualism entirely before building a performer back up, and it has produced some of the most technically accomplished wrestlers in the world. The documented reality is more demanding than almost any collegiate athletic program in the United States. Here is the fact that even hardcore wrestling fans rarely know, and it reframes everything else on this list. In 1984, a Ric Flair match in Greensboro, North Carolina, generated actual calls to local law enforcement from audience members who believed the violence was real and wanted police to intervene. Officers reportedly made contact with arena management. This is documented in the Wrestling Observer newsletter historical archives and referenced in The Death of WCW by Reynolds and Alvarez. Here is the dark irony. Under the athletic exhibition classification most states used, what those officers were witnessing was, legally speaking, closer to a theatrical performance than a fight. There was technically nothing to enforce, and that exact legal classification, the fiction designed to protect wrestling from regulatory oversight, also meant that when real violence did occur inside that system, like Owen Hart's death 5 years later, the liability frameworks were catastrophically unclear. The fiction that protected the industry also left the people inside it legally exposed in ways that took decades of litigation to untangle. If any of these facts hit you the way they hit me the first time, go verify them. Every single one has a named source, a documented case, a date you can look up. The wrestling industry is genuinely one of the strangest legal and cultural institutions in modern entertainment, and we've barely scratched the surface. If this video blew your mind, hit subscribe and ring the bell. We drop verified, stranger-than-fiction content every single week, and the next one is already going to break your brain.